Brogno, and these are some of my students from my English 145 class, and we're going to go over kind of the basics of rhetoric. So the first thing we should define is, what is rhetoric?
The art of persuasion.
The art of persuasion and
Critical thinking.
It does take part of critical and the available means of persuasion. So as rhetoricians, we study persuasion and argument. Rhetoric, yeah. I would argue, and there's actually a book I just went looking for, but it's at my house, that everything is an argument. So if I were to say, if someone were to ask me, what did you do yesterday after school, Courtney?
What did you do yesterday after school, Courtney?
Oh, Gina, I went home with every intention to grade, but instead, I had a glass of wine and read a book. Now, while many of you may think that's just a statement, in fact, it's an argument. Why? How could I be challenged?
You should have graded our papers.
No, not challenge me that way. You could say something like, really? I don't believe you. Prove it. Well, I read this book, right? Something along the lines of that. So rhetoricians argue that everything is an argument. Now, to understand this more, we're going to have to go back to the 5th century BCE, Greece, Athens. I have a little picture here, just so you know what Athens looked like in the 5th century BCE. Okay, so one of the things we're going to talk about is what Athens did to get us to where we are now, and that is that they created democracy. Say it louder. A democracy and an open form of communication and government. So for the first time, you could go and actually argue your case. However, what couldn't you do? You couldn't hire
A lawyer.
a lawyer. No, that didn't happen yet. So instead, you would hire a
Sophist.
okay, or a speech teacher, but we'll start with a sophist. What were the sophists?
The sophist.
Traveling
Teachers.
Speech teachers. They traveled around. They were relativists. There were 2 schools. Protagoras? Yes, starts with a G, right? And the main thing that we can remember about the sophists is that they were relativists, correct?
Yes.
But also, what would you say they kind of were?
Greedy.
Yeah.
Greedy.
And they didn't care like what the argument was, if it was good or bad. All they cared is that you won.
Yes. So we would often refer to them as slimy lawyers today. And they charged a lot. Then we get to Plato.
He's cool.
Plato's cool. And he was also a speech teacher, right?
Yeah.
And he did not like the sophists. Why?
He believed in absolute moral truth.
He believed in absolute moral truth. The sophists were relativists. He believed in absolute moral truth. And why else didn't he like them?
Because he was competing with it.
He was competing with them. Good job. Yes, for students. So we look at Plato, and we know he believed in absolute truth because of his world of forms. Yeah, and we're not going to get into that, but still. Plato's pretty cool, but he's kind of someone I wouldn't want to have dinner with, right? So we'll move on to Aristotle, who was a student of Plato. And Aristotle is kind of our man for rhetoric. Like, I would make out with him. I totally would, because I like it that much. And what Aristotle did was look at the sophists and say, yeah, they're kind of slimy, but they've got something going with their relativism. Like, they kind of know. But Plato, you're awesome, and you're moral, and you're ethical, but you're way too stringent with the ideas of, truth with a capital T. So he came up with what he considered probable knowledge. So he believed that there was a way to argue that was ethical, and where you could get to knowledge most of the time, okay? So he did this by creating his rhetorical triangle. And ethos, what's ethos? Credibility, and this is the speaker, and that we trust the speaker, right? And then we have pathos, which deals with the audience, which is an appeal to
Emotion.
What is the most powerful emotion?
Fear.
Fear. And then we have logos, which we consider support, as well as the logic of support. So how would you judge logos? You're looking for what?
Facts.
Facts,
For the
evidence, to make sure it's not full of logical fallacies.
Or biased.
Or bias, so you're looking for all that. This is the text. So in speech classes, you would do this in a speech. In a class like 145, we take all of this and turn it into an essay, right? Now, moving on from that, we realized that we were also taught the other thing that was really important to Aristotle was the refutatio. And what's a refutatio?
Responds to your.
Yeah.
That's the opposing side.
Devil's advocate.
Or an objection.
Aren't you just, you're acknowledging the opposing argument?
Yes, an acknowledgement of opposing views, right? Great. And then we have this guy, Stephen Toulmin. Let me check that, because I always want to say it's Toulmin, but yeah, Toulmin. In 1958, he wrote a book called The Structure of Arguments, and he introduced the concept of warrants. What are warrants?
Shared beliefs.
You could say shared beliefs. What else?
Some assumption behind an argument.
An assumption that you hope as a writer the audience shares with you. So, for example, if I said people today in the United States work too hard and they don't spend enough time with their family. Therefore, I believe parents should spend time with their family. What are the warrants of that?
That parents
Want to spend more time with
That parents want to spend more time with their kids.
that they
Kids want
can.
to spend more time with their parents.
Kids want to spend more time with their parents that you can afford to, right? So that's what we deal with when we look at an argument. We look at the assumptions. We're not going to talk about logical fallacies because that's part of it too. But mostly ethos, pathos, and logos. So I'm going to have three. This is all, none of this is scripted. I need 2 students to come up and play parts. Come on, Bernardo. Okay, so this is the situation. Alex, you're the dad. Bernardo is your son. Bernardo, you're going to ask your dad for more money. Okay, and so of course dad's going to say no because it's,
It's money.
and so you're going to have to prove yourself using ethos, pathos, and logos. Show us how you do it.
Okay, Dad, I need some more money in order to pay for my textbooks and all my groceries, or else I'm going to lose 30 pounds, be malnourished, and I won't be able to pass my classes because I won't have the necessary materials to further my knowledge of the topics. So it would be a waste of your overall paying in my tuition. So I think that this extra money is pretty much irrelevant compared to the total amount you're paying and the amount you risk wasting if you don't give me that extra money.
And what about the job you have? What is
The
that
job
paying
I-
for?
That's paying for it's also paying for materials and things like that, but I'm also putting it into my savings account so I could get a start up in life when I get out of college.
Great. Dad, would you say yes? Right now. Okay, you guys tell me.
Yeah!
Bernardo did a great job. Tell me when he established his ethos.
When he went the school route.
He's talked about being a student. He also did another way. What was he going to do with his money from his job? What is he doing? Saving. So that shows us that Bernardo is credible and trustworthy because he's saving some of his money and he cares about his education. Logos?
He uses so he won't fail his classes.
Well, that's a bit of pathos too, but he needs materials for classes.
And food.
And food.
I'm not very out there.
Hold on, we're not there yet. That's what stuck with you. So he also mentioned the fact that he used this kind of idea by investing in me, right? To his dad, you're investing in a larger education. That was great as well. And then pathos, he did so well, which was what?
Malnourished.
He'd be malnourished. He might lose 30 pounds. What else? He was going to fail. So you guys did a great job of showing that. Now, of course, if we were all logical thinkers, which we are, we're all critical thinkers in this class, we would look at Bernardo, and what would be the first thing we would cut down as a parent?
Oversimplification.
He oversimplified it. Also, overuse of pathos, right? Not too balanced too well. I highly doubt you're gonna die or not be malnourished. But you did a great job showing this. one of the things you want to remember is if you rely too much on your ethos, what's going to happen?
You're gonna make, your audience is gonna understand you.
Yeah, they'll understand you, but what if your whole thing is ethos?
You don't have facts.
You're not going to have any facts to back it up. If you rely too much on logos, what's going to happen?
You'd be bored.
It's so boring. And if you rely too much on pathos,
It's not about it.
you have, yeah, you might make people cry, all that kind of stuff. But in the end, you're not going to get what you want. Now, I use the term get what you want, and that's not what an argument should be about, because an argument, as I've taught you guys, should be about what?
Being right.
Not being right.
Agreeing to a solution, yes, agreeing to
You could-
differences.
Somewhat compromise, understanding each other, right? And the different views we have. It's not about winning, even though some of you think it is. It is about understanding each other better, which makes this a great example, this class, of what a democracy should be, right? A wonderful democracy, which is what this nation was built on, and you guys can just tell me, what did I just use? Pathos, but appeal. I appeal to tradition. All right, you guys, that's all we wanted to say. Hope you understand the ethos, pathos, and logos a little bit better. And thank you to these students.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving.